Welcome back to Train Signal. You're watching the video for Lab 3 using Symantec Ghost to deploy clients. In this video, you will learn how to use the industry software Symantec Ghost to actually deploy clients on your network. All the limitations that we talked about risks suddenly go away if you use this software called Symantec Ghost. So what you're going to learn is the following. We will first install Symantec Ghost. Then I'll show you how to configure what is known as the Ghost multicast server. We will also learn how to create a client boot floppy disk, and then we will first take an image using Ghost, and then we will use the image that we have just created to deploy across a network. So let's get started with this. Well, the first question is, why Ghost? Ghost is perhaps the most popular imaging software in the industry. It is very robust, has been in existence for quite some time. In fact, it used to be owned by a different company altogether. Symantec liked it, the people with Norton, they liked it so much that they actually acquired this, and it fits very well with their other products that they offer. So this is a great software. You can download a version from Symantec's website by going to www.symantec.com. The version that I'll be using over here is version 7. But the steps that I'm going to show you is valid from version 6.5 onwards. So if you download the latest version, which I believe is 7.5, the steps will work fine as well. Okay, so we're going to use Symantec Ghost. Now, why are we using Symantec Ghost? Once again, it is very popular, number one. Number two, you saw the limitations and risks. Let's recount them one more time. You could only deploy certain operating systems, namely Windows XP Professional, Windows 2003 Server, and Windows 2000 Professional only. If you have Windows 98 computers, you cannot deploy those clients. Then there were limitations as to how big the hard disk was when you're using RipRep. Well, those limitations will not exist in Ghost at all. Then Ghost also is very, very user friendly as far as you being able to make partitions on the fly as you install the client image on the computer. In other words, if you are installing the image on a 50 gigabyte hard disk, risk required that the whole 50 gigabyte be formatted as one drive. Symantec Ghost will actually prompt you to create a partition of a size that you desire. So all those limitations are suddenly gone. And last but not the least, Ghost requires virtually 1/3 to maybe 25% of the time that RIS did to actually install clients. So for those limitations, and after you go through these labs, we'll talk about the comparison one more time, you will see that Symantec is far more superior to, Symantec Ghost is far more superior to the RIS method. Of course, the biggest disadvantage is that it is a third-party software. That means you have to buy it, you have to buy client licenses, whereas RIS was already included with the Windows Server 2003 package. So let's get started with Symantec Ghost then. Here are the steps that you will need to actually deploy the clients. The first step is to prepare the model PC. What this means is that you install the operating system on that computer, make sure you configure all the drivers properly, make sure there are no errors on that computer, and then install all the applications, and then again make sure that the applications are working okay also on that computer. It's going to be a model computer. You're going to take an image. Just like with anybody, just like the model in the real life, once you take a picture for a magazine, this model should be perfect because that's the image that will be deployed on all computers in your network. So once we have done that, then we are ready to take the image, and I'll show you how the steps. We're going to install Symantec Ghost and take the image, and then I'll show you how to use the image. So let's get started. The first thing we'll do is go to the model PC and make sure it is ready. There are several steps that are required for this. So let me minimize the screen and take you to our client. And if you've been following the labs in the right sequence, then your computer is already ready at this point. On this computer, namely client 1, what I have is the following. I have Windows XP Professional Operating System, and I have Microsoft Office XP installed on it already. And this installation was done as part of the last lab for RipRep. So if you've been following these labs, your client is ready. We need to do a little bit more, but for most part, the operating system and the application is ready. So I'm going to close this Word screen. What do we need to do next? Well, before I take the image, what I have to do is the following. I have to strip down this computer of its security IDs, also known as SIDs. The reason, this is an extremely important reason. The reason you do that is because when you deploy client images in your network, no two clients should have the same security ID, otherwise it appears to be the same computer to the domain controller. Active Directory requires that each computer have a unique identifier. So there is a program that is included in the Microsoft XP or server CDs that will actually strip the computer of all the personality, especially the IDs that it has, so that the image becomes as generic as possible. And that program is called sysprep, also known as the System Preparation Tool. Now, this program is not installed by default. So what you need to do is, after you install the operating system and all the applications, you need to insert either the Windows XP Professional CD or the Windows Server 2003 CD. There we go. And I'm going to open the CD-ROM. And there's a folder called Support. In this folder, there are several tools. Here's the tools folder. The one that I'm interested in is the cabinet file called Deploy. All the deployment tools are in this file. So what I'm going to do is double click on this. And then the program that I'm interested in is called sysprep. What we will do is the following. We will take all these programs and put it into a folder in the C drive called Tools. So I'm going to do it in this manner. I'm going to say Edit, Select All, and I'm going to copy to the folder, and over here request a new folder called Tools, and copy these programs over here. So if you've never done this before, now you know to either go to Windows XP Professional or the Server 2003 CD and extract these tools from here and put it into a folder called Tools. So that way they're handy. Now the reason we did this is because in this Tools folder now is a program called sysprep, also known as the System Preparation Tool. What this program does is the following. Once I double click on this program, it's going to strip this computer with all the IDs, the security IDs, and make it as generic as possible to the Active Directory domain. And then the computer will shut itself down. It will actually seal itself. Now, when the computer shuts down, it is extremely, extremely important not to start this computer. The next time we're going to start this computer is when we actually take the image from the Ghost server. So after this computer shut down, make sure it remains shut until we are ready for the next step. So let's go ahead and run the sysprep utility. I'm going to double click on this, and it's telling me that it's going to modify this computer security settings, which we expected. Let's click on OK over there. And here's the system preparation tool. Okay, I'm going to say over here reseal, and then the shutdown mode is shut down. So after it finishes resealing, it's actually going to shut it down. And I'm going to click on the OK button. It should take a few minutes, and then this computer will actually shut down. Now, also remember, I have remotely connected to this computer and using this step. I highly recommend you don't do it in this manner. You actually visit that computer and run this program from there, just to make sure that all the programs are actually closed while you're running this. In fact, in the background over here, I'm going to click and close this tools folder as well. So this should take a few minutes. It's going to actually strip the system down completely of all its security identifiers and then shut it down. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this screen, and let's go back to our domain controller and see what we have to do over there in order to get this Ghost process going. So I'm going to minimize the screen, and then we'll come back to this later on. So here we go, minimized. And now let's go to our domain controller, namely DC1. Let's log in. This again is going to be a client server application where my server, namely Ghost, will be running on DC1. So I'm going to install Ghost over here. I have inserted the CD-ROM in the server, and I have the folder ready over here. You can install, once again, this software called Ghost 7.0 or any other version from Symantec's website. They give you a free, I would say, a 30 or 60-day evaluation copy. So let's install this. It's going to take a few minutes. So I'm going to double click on this and install. By the way, did you see this is flashing out here, telling me that something is up? So I'm going to go back over there. And actually I've lost connection because my client computer shut down. So that's good news, and I can see it over here physically. The computer has been shut down. So going back over here, I'm going to close this connection because we don't need it anymore. In fact, we can't use it. So let's install Ghost. I simply clicked on the setup program, and I'm going to follow the prompts. Accept the agreement. It wants me to refer to the catalog. That is okay. And over here, I need to install the Ghost client as well as the standard tools. If you're doing this only on the client machine, you can install a client, or if you need only the tools, you can install standard tools also. Let's click on the next button to continue. Here we go. I'm going to type, keep this information as is. The serial number is optional because it's a demo copy. It needs an email address. So I'm going to put in my email address. Okay, click on the next button. Okay, so 14 days. and it will work with 10 clients. That is sufficient for our practice session over here. It's going to install the program in the following location, and then let's finish the installation process. Over here, it's going to create a service account that is needed to activate the Windows service, and it needs a password over here. I'm going to select a standard password, which is capital P ASSWORD 1, so that all our passwords are similar. And here goes the installation process. So as soon as this process finishes, then we'll go on to the next step, which is how to actually capture an image from the client computer. So I'm going to pause this video a little bit. As soon as this finishes, we're going to continue from this point forward. Welcome back. The installation just finished, so I'm at the final process over here. I'm going to say next, and then we are done. Okay, so we have successfully installed Ghost on this computer. So let's see what we have done so far. Going back to our summary steps over here, we prepared the model PC. We made sure that everything is working on it okay, and we ran the sysprep utility on it. Now we are on step number 2, where we are ready to take the image from the Ghost server. Now, what we have done so far is actually installed a server, namely Ghost. Now let's configure it. What we need to do is the following. Let me first give you a little tour of Ghost. I'm going to go back over here on DC1, and then here's a new program waiting for us, Ghost. We are actually going to use 2 of the programs from here. The first one is what is known as the Ghost Boot Wizard. That will let us create the boot floppy disk. This is similar to the RipRep floppy that we had before. These floppy disks play a very important role in networking and deployment, simply because you have to be able to boot a computer remotely so that it connects to the server and gets the image. So these boot floppies create a very important role. They not only boot the computer, they actually obtain an IP address and then connect to the appropriate server to start the process. So we're going to do that, and then in our example, we're going to use what is known as a Ghost multicast server to take the image, and then we'll use the Ghost multicast server to actually deploy the image back on the client. So let's first start with creating a boot floppy disk. The way you do that is by actually using Ghost Boot Wizard, and this wizard will start and give you several different options of creating floppy disks. For example, the one that we're going to create is called what is known as a network boot disk. What this will do is start a computer, obtain an IP address, and then link up with Ghost for multicasting. Multicasting is a process whereby the image goes from one computer to several computers simultaneously. This is an important step to understand, and that really helps the performance of deployment, and it reduces the amount of time that is needed to deploy the image. Let's say that there are 3 or 4 computers that you're trying to deploy the image to. What will happen is that all 3 computers will simultaneously, or they can connect one after another, and they'll wait, and then the server will do multicasting from this point to multiple points, send the same files simultaneously, so that the network bandwidth is optimized. So that's the kind of floppy disk that we need, and we're going to create this. There are some other choices. For example, this floppy disk will simply create a boot disk so that it loads the drivers, and then you have to actually map a drive letter on the server so that you can start the process. We really don't need this kind of a floppy disk, but this can have applications where you simply want to start a computer where you want to start a client computer, hook up to the server, and be able to copy some files off a remote share. So if you want to ever do something like that, just make the floppy from the Ghost computer. These floppies will let you actually create the CD create the image on CDs. A lot of people for home computers use this method. The only disadvantage is that depending on the size of the image, which can be between 4 to 8 gigabytes on a business desktop, you may require several CDs or DVDs. And then there are other kinds where it will simply create a CD-ROM boot image and so forth. So the one we're going to create is what is known as the network boot disk. I have inserted a floppy disk in the computer, and now I'm ready to create my network boot floppy. I'm going to click on the next button. Now once again, it's asking me of the type of floppy disk that I need. If you recall, the floppy disk that we need is for the NIC card 3C905B. Once again, how do you check that? You simply right click on Network Places, Properties, and then check the type of NIC card that we're using. In our case, go to the properties over here one more time to show you. This is the NIC card that I'm using, 3C905B. So let me close this. And again, this is the NIC card on the client computer that you need to find out about. If the NIC card on the server is something else, we don't have to worry about it, because we are creating this boot disk for the client. So I need to find the appropriate client over here, and the one for us is this one, 3C90XDX, and it's going to make what is known as the NDIS2 driver. This is the DOS driver that will actually start the system, and then we can boot off it. Now, if you recall in RISC server, and this is what really makes Ghost shine a lot. In RISC server, you will limit it to only a certain number of floppies. From what I understand, there are about 25 to 30 NIC cards only that are supported, and you could create a floppy for those NIC cards only. I'm sorry, I used the word floppy before. What I meant was NIC card. Over here, the support is much more elaborate. You see this? This is definitely more than, and you can see there are many vendors that are supported out here. Now, if your vendor is not listed, that is not the end of the world either. All you have to do is go to the vendor's website or in the CD-ROM that came along with a NIC card and find the NDIS2 driver, which is the DOS driver. Once you find the NDIS2 driver, look at these tools over here. You can always click on the add button and then actually add the NDIS2 driver over here so that it appears in this list for future use. So once again, if your NIC card is listed, well and good. If your NIC card is not listed, you can create the utility over here so that the appropriate floppy disk can be created for you. No such facility was there in the RISC server. So let's select the one that we want and then continue with this. It's letting me know that it's going to create a Symantec Ghost floppy disk, and it's going to put the client program called Ghost on it. We'll discuss this a little bit further later on. I'm going to click on the next button, and now it wants to know how will the client obtain an IP address. If you recall, in the RISC lab, we had created a DHCP server, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Now, if I did not have a DHCP server, I could always click on this and actually put in static IPs. Once again, RISC required that you have a DHCP server. Over here, the DHCP server is not required. Just put the appropriate IP address and you'll be connected to it. Isn't that wonderful? So all the limitations that we talk about RISC are simply going away as we do Ghost. Click on the next button. It's ready to create a floppy disk. It's also going to format it for me, which is great. I'm going to click, this is the summary screen. Click on the next button, and it's going to start the process. Quick format, sure. So it's going to create a floppy disk, and it's going to put the following on the disk. Let's finish this. I need to close the button over here, and now it's copying the Ghost software on it. What this floppy will do is the following. It will, number one, boot the computer. Number two, it will load the NIC card driver and then connect to the DHCP server to obtain an IP address. Once the IP address is obtained, then it will connect to the Ghost server and then actually download the image from the server to the client. Or if you're trying to create the image, it will upload the image from the client to the server. The process is again similar to what we did in RISC. The only difference is that this is much more user-friendly, much more flexible, and the biggest advantage you'll see later on will be the time. This takes, as I said, about 25% of the time that it takes in RISC to do. Also, the transfer, as you will notice, is not file to file. It's actually a binary transfer of image from the server to the client or vice versa. So we'll get to see all that in a minute as soon as this floppy disk is ready. This is the main program, ghost.exe, that you're looking at over here. This is the client program that is being copied to the floppy disk, which eventually runs once the client is up and running. So this is the final program that runs. This is the client portion of the Ghost software that will hook up to the Ghost server. Alrighty, so we are done. We don't want to start again, so I'm going to click on finish, and our floppy disk is ready. Let's again look at the floppy disk. So I can show you the contents of this floppy. Here we go. There are several files. If you recall, these are the boot files that you may see in any boot floppy. The only difference is that it is using IBM DOS as opposed to MS-DOS. And then over here, it created a folder called net, which basically has the packet drivers for your NIC card. And then there's a folder called Ghost, which basically has the Ghost client application for Ghost client application that to hook up to the server. So those are the files on it. And now we can insert this this floppy disk onto our client computer. But before we do that, we need to prepare the server. So let's take a little look at a little summary over here. What we've done is the following. We have prepared the client computer. On the server, we have installed Symantec Ghost, and we just created a floppy disk. Now what I need to do is get the Ghost server ready to take an image. All right, so let's prepare the Ghost server. I'm going to minimize this, go back to DC1. And then, if you recall, there were two programs we're going to use in Ghost. We use the first program, namely Ghost Boot Wizard. The next program we're going to use is what is known as a multicast server. So I'm going to start this program called multicast server. It's a very simple program, however a very powerful one. So let me maximize the screen, and here we go. I'm going to show you how to fill up the screen over here, and then we're ready to take an image. Session name. Over here, I simply type in a number, or you can be a little bit more descriptive if you want to. I'm just going to put the number 1. But let me explain what the session name is. You can have Ghost simultaneously give different images to different kinds of clients. So each kind of client needs a certain image, and the session number is the one that identifies a session with the Ghost server. So if you, for example, if on clients 1, 2, and 3, you're installing Windows XP Professional, and on clients 4, 5, and 6, you're installing Windows 2000 Professional, make sure you give session number 1 to the Windows XP, to the clients that are going to get Windows XP, and session number 2 to another client. In other words, you can have multiple sessions running at the same time. Your Ghost server, one Ghost server can give multiple images at the same time. All the client has to do is connect to the right session number. So having done that, let's go on to this. And this may be a little bit misleading in the beginning. Let me make sure you understand this well. There are two options here: load to clients, dump from client. What we're going to do is the following first. I do not have a Ghost image created. First we're going to do is create a Ghost image. That means I need to extract the image from my client, which is the computer client 1, to the Ghost server so that I can get the image. That is called dump from client. So once again, to extract the image, you use dump from client. To actually deploy images to clients, we will use load to clients. Hopefully that clarified that. Then it needs to know the image of the file. So to do that, what we're going to do is the following. I'm going to minimize this for a moment. It's a good idea to actually go to one of these partitions. Make sure there's enough space on it because these images can be fairly big. And I'm going to create a folder called images. And you don't have to do this, but I'm going to share this so that my image is available to me across the network from some other computers also if I need to copy it from one server to another. So I just created a holding area over here called images and shared it. Also, let's make sure we have enough space on the hard disk. I have about 4 gigabytes left. That is plenty for what we're trying to do. Alrighty, so having done the necessary folders, having created the necessary folders, let's do this now. Now under image file, I'm going to click on browse so I can pick up the folder that I wanted. So I'm going to go to the C drive. Of course, we could have created the folder right from here. Let's go to the E drive because that's where we created the folder at. And here's the folder images. Now I need to give the name of the file in advance. So I'm going to call this one XP Pro. And then click on the save button. It automatically puts the extension .gho. So click on save. So what we've done is the following so far. We have told the server, rather the Ghost multicast server, to start what is known as session 1, to get the image from the client computer, and to put the image in the folder called images and name the image xppro.gho. At this point I'm ready, so I'm going to click on this button called accept clients. Now the Ghost server is ready for the client to connect to it so that it can actually upload the image from the client to the server. So I'm going to minimize this. Now what we need to do is the following. Let me minimize this. On the client computer, and you can't actually physically see me do this, what I'm going to do is insert the floppy disk that we just created from Symantec Ghost and then start the client. The client will actually hook up to the server, and then I'll go through the screens that will actually follow once that happens. So give me a moment and I'm going to do that in just one moment. Okay, I'm back on my seat. I just inserted the floppy disk in our client computer and restarted the client computer, and this activity is going to take place in the background. What I'm going to show you are the screens that you will see. These screens are also part of the lab, so if you're following it from the lab book, you can follow the screens exactly the way they are. And here's what's going to happen. When the computer starts with the floppy disk, you're going to see starting PC DOS. Remember, this was the IBM PC DOS. So the computer starting with the floppy disk, it's going to start the computer and load what is known as the packet driver or the DOS drivers for the NIC card that we have selected. So in our case, it is 3COM, and the NIC card driver will be loaded. It will load the necessary software. The mouse is also installed. By the way, the mouse does not work very well on the client side, so don't be surprised. Just try to use the tab key to move from one menu option to another. So once this is done, the last thing it will do is load the Ghost client software, which is ghost.exe. Once that is done, the screen will look something like this. It will say, welcome to Symantec Ghost. You click on the OK button. Again, if the mouse is not, if the mouse is a little bit flaky, just click on the OK button using the tab keys. So tab to the OK button, click on the enter key, and then you would have selected this button. That's how I would do it. Same thing over here. If you cannot use the mouse, go up, use the up arrows to go to multicasting, select it, and now here we go. It will say something like this. It will say that it obtained an IP address of 200.17, and now it is ready for you to enter the session number. This is the session number that we selected. It was 1. So you enter 1, and then you hit OK. And then the following screen will come up. This is what it's telling you is what the hard disk is on your computer. It's saying that you have the following hard disk. Do you accept it? You click on OK. If you had more than one hard disk over here, you would be able to select whichever hard disk you want to install this image on. Remember, we can also make partitions, and you will see that in just a moment. But this is just a selection of the hard drive on your computer. Going to the next screen, is going to say that I'm going to actually start creating the image of this hard disk. Do you want to compress the image? And here are the three options: no, fast, and high. And again, the trade-off is between space or size and speed. So the best combination is fast. It's going to do an optimal between speed and size. If you really want high compression because of lack of space, you click on high. It will slow the process down a little bit. If you say no, the file size will be big, but the process will be faster. And then the moment you do that, what will happen is it will start taking an image, and you should be able to see something like this on your screen. Over here, it gives you a good indication as to the time. Usually something like this for a computer that has, let's say, an operating system and a couple of applications installed. Believe it or not, I would say between 4 to 6 or 7 minutes. That's all it takes. Once it is finished the process, you will see this message box saying dump completed. Click on continue. Once you do that, it has successfully extracted the image from the client and then put it on the server. Now, the process is actually happening in the background, and as soon as it is done, I'm going to show it to you. But let me take a little pause over here, and I'll join you as soon as I have something more to show you on the server side. Welcome back, and let's check the progress so far. I'm going to go to DC1 where we have the Go server running, and here, have a look over here. The client connected to the Go server, you can see that it obtained an IP address of 200.200.200.16. If you recall, in our DHCP server, we had excluded the first 15, so here's the 16th IP that it obtained. Here's the MAC address of the client, and look at this, it's showing me the progress over here. It's going to take about 6 minutes, like I said. All the clients that are connected actually show up on the screen over here. You can stop them from here. You have basically total control over exactly what's going on. Okay, so this is going to take a few minutes. Once this is done, I'll show you the image. We'll have a look at the size of the image so that you have a fairly good idea as to how big it is. And then we would have successfully extracted the image. So what we would have done is successfully taken the image from the client and put it on the server. Once the image is sitting on a server, you can simultaneously deploy it to as many clients as you want using Ghost. And the process, as you can see, is extremely fast. So I'm going to stop the video one more time and then join you as soon as this progress bar is actually over here. Welcome back. The process just finished. I'm going to click on this button OK over here for transfer complete. And actually I should have shown you something before I did that. It took about 7 minutes, and you can see it right here on these screens how long it took. Okay, so we have successfully obtained the image from the client to the server. So let's exit out over here. Going back to DC1. Let's go to the E drive, to the images folder, and here's the image. And it's about 1.5, about 1.2 gigabytes. So that's the size of the image. Now on the client side, you will see a message basically saying that the process finished and you want to shut it down. Once again, make sure you shut it down and do not restart that computer. All right, because the last thing we ran on that computer was sysprep, and it has stripped down the identity of that computer, making it as generic as possible. What happens is that if you were to restart a computer now, it will go through the mini setup wizard and then starts processing some of the setup files. So please don't do that. Make sure that it remains shut until you're ready to actually deploy the image. So having done that, now let's say that the image that we just obtained, you would like to put it on a different computer or on several computers. So now we're going to do the reverse process. So going back to our summary steps over here. Let's go back up. We have created the model PC. We have installed Symantec Ghost and taken an image of that computer. And now the last thing to do is to actually deploy the image on several clients. Now to do that is very similar to what we've done before. what you will do is the following. You will go back to the Ghost server and start the Ghost multicast server. Let me close this images folder. So you will go to Start, Ghost, and then go to the Ghost multicast server. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. So all programs, Ghost, and the multicast server. Now once you go over here, this time again we'll call the session number whatever we want. We'll give it the number of 1. This time we're going to select load to clients because it's going to go from the server to the client. The image file name, this time we will select, rather than create the image, we will actually select the image. So I'm going to click on the browse button, and it remembered the name of our folder, so I'm going to select the right image. If you have more than 1 images, they'll all be lined up over here, and you select the appropriate image that you would like to give to session 1. So let's select this image, click on open. So session 1, load to clients, we have selected the image. Now actually this is sometimes closed, so I'm going to click on this, and you can see all the options over here. So once again, there are more options than you can see over here. Click on more options, and let's discuss this. You can actually start a time, set up a time where it can where you can start. However, what is important is to put what is known as a client count. Now this is how this works. Let's say that you have 5 client computers on which you would like to deploy this image. What you will do is the following. You will take the floppy disk to the first client, or you can create 5 floppy disks if you want. Go to each client, start the computer. As each computer starts, they will come up with their normal screens, and then you'll have to enter the session name to actually connect to the Ghost server. As each client is connected, the Ghost server will not actually start deploying the image the moment the first client connects. It's going to wait until all the clients in the client number over here, client count number over here, are connected. So if I put a client count of 5 over here, what will happen is as each client connects, they will be connected, but the Ghost server will wait, and you will see the client IP address and the MAC address show up over here. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After the 5th client connects, will the Ghost server actually send the image from the server to the client, because it is using what is known as the multicast mode. Multicast mode means from one point to several points at the same time. Okay, so this makes it very efficient process. So if you're going to deploy it for 5 clients, just put 5 out there. If you are deploying it for 50 clients, just put number 50 over here. The moment the 50th client connects, will the image process actually start. If you do not put anything over here, that's not a problem either. All you have to do is that you have to say accept clients, and then once the clients connect, you can go back over here and click on the send key. It is not lighted up now, but it will be the moment the clients connect. Okay, so it's your choice. By putting a client count number over here, makes it one less step. After so many clients connect, automatically the Ghost server will start deploying, and you'll find this a very useful feature. So over here we're going to say client count 1 because we only have 1 in our network. Now over here, what do you want to clone, the disk or a partition? Now if you had only cloned a partition, you can do that as well. In our case, we had cloned the entire disk, so that is fine. That's it. At this point, we're going to say accept clients, and then the server is now waiting for the client to connect. Now what I'm going to do is physically walk up to the client machine and actually start the process. You will see the moment the client machine connects over here, that you will see the IP address, and then the process will start automatically. So I'm going to this time I will not pause at all. I'm going to keep the screen on and then do the remaining from the other computers. So let me just I just came back from the client computer. I just started that computer with the remote, with the boot floppy, and we're going to wait for the client to connect. So as this happens, I'm going to do the necessary steps on the other side. And then as soon as I'm at a point where all the steps on the client side are done, I know you cannot see the screens for that. I'm sorry about that. As soon as all the screens are done, we'll go back to our server screen and see the connections in progress, so that you can see exactly how this lab will take place. All the screenshots that are needed are already in the lab book. So as long as you follow the steps in the lab book, you should be okay. Just to let you know what's going on the client side, on my screen over here, it's actually loading up the NIC card driver, and now it's ready to deploy the client, the Ghost client. Soon I'll be able to see the blue screen, and I'll describe to you the process as I'm going forward on this. And the moment I click on the OK button, you will see the connection on your screen show up. So it's still loading at this point over here. It's amazing what one floppy can do if you really think about it. So here we go. It just finished loading, and I'm going to click on the OK button on the welcome screen. Again, my mouse is not working, so I'm using the combination of tab and enter keys and the up arrows to go up and down. Clicking on OK, I'm using the up arrows to go to multicasting, and then over here I can see that I've obtained an IP address automatically. Again, it is 200.200.200.16. I'm clicking on 1 as a session name, and then I'm clicking on the OK button over here. It's asking me for the size of the hard disk, and I'm going to click on OK. At this point, it is asking me how big or small the image can be. I'm going to accept the way it is. Click on this, and I'm going to start the process. So at this point, you should see some activity on your screen. I'm going to switch. Let's see. Very good. The screen that you're looking at, you may be seeing the screen all the time, but that was not privy to me. I was looking at the client screen, and here we go. The client is connected, and you can see the imaging in process. It will take about 7 to 8 minutes for this to finish. Once this finishes, you will have the client ready with the operating system as well as the applications. Now, please keep in mind that you can do for more than one client at the same time. If that were the case, all of them will be lined up over here, and depending on the client count, you would have to wait until the last client is connected, or you can always click on a send button and then send the images to the clients that are currently connected. So this will take a few minutes. As soon as it is done, we will proceed ahead with the rest of the steps for this lab. Welcome back. The process is just about to finish, about 10 seconds left over here, 12 seconds left. And as you can see, this time I won't make the mistake of clicking on the OK button like I did last time. It took about 4.5, 5 minutes for one client. If you had done this simultaneously, and I do this on a regular basis, let's say that I'm trying to deploy 20, 25 clients at the same time, it may take about 25 to 30 minutes. So within 30 minutes, you have so many computers ready. Here we go. The transfer process is complete. And you can see it took just 1 second less than 5 minutes over here. I'm going to click on the OK button, and we have successfully deployed the client. On the client side, make sure that you remove the floppy disk, because remember, the floppy disk is still in there. If you do not remove it and you restart the computer, you'll be going in a cycle. So remove the floppy disk, restart the computer. When the computer restarts, it will go through the mini setup wizard for Windows XP, asking you for information such as user's name, registration, password, and so forth, and eventually your client will be up and running. So saves a lot of time. And also remember, this one already had the applications on it. So if you have a bunch of applications that users in your network use, they can already be deployed. Now, what kind of a strategy should you use for Ghost? What I would do is the following. I would have what is known as a base image that everybody needs. And then once a base image is installed, you can either A, use group policy objects to deploy applications as needed. I'm going to exit out of this. We're done with this. I would use GPOs to install applications as needed. That way, the right user will get the right application. How do you perform application deployment using GPOs was a topic of discussion in Lab 14 series of Active Directory. So that's one method. The other method is you can create a departmental image for each type of computer in your department. So in other words, if you have a finance department, take a client computer, install the operating system and all the applications that a typical user in that department will need, and create a ghost image for it and call it a finance image. In a similar way, you can have IT image and so forth. That way, when you are deploying an image for a network, use the right image so that all the operating system and the software that is there, that is needed for the users of that particular computer, are available to you as part of the image itself. In that case, you do not need GPOs, no additional task is needed. Simply, you will start the computer, and the user will be able to log on to the network and use the applications that was part of the image itself. So you can use a combination of the two, or you can use one over the other. Now, the reason why we use Ghost, or why Ghost is so popular, is because it has distinct advantages over RIS. And again, I've repeated this topic several times, but just to summarize the main features of Ghost, let's see how it is superior to RIS or to other methods that you may know of cloning or deploying. The first thing is it does not matter what operating system you are trying to deploy. In fact, you can go one step further. I don't know if you know this, but even if you have a Windows 98 computer, you can install the Symantec Ghost software on it and make it act as a server. Again, the only limitation will be that you can have as many as 8 to 10 computers connect to the server, to that computer, simply because of Windows file sharing restrictions, but you do not even need a server operating system to actually install the Symantec Ghost product. You can install it on a client, on a desktop client as well. Absolutely no restrictions. On the client side, to deploy, you can create an image of just about any operating system, Microsoft or non-Microsoft. You can create an image for Novell, for Linux, or for any other operating system that you can think of with any applications that are installed on it. So be aware of that. There is no restriction. As far as the NIC card, again, a lot of NIC cards are already listed in the Ghost software, the Ghost boot wizard itself. If it is not listed, there is a facility to add additional NDIS2 drivers to the software so that your NIC card is compatible. Whereas RIS, you required a certain type of a NIC card in order to create the boot floppy. So those were some severe limitations. The next limitation is that when you actually perform an image, or actually when you install the image on a client, you can choose how big a hard disk partition you would like to create right at that moment. In other words, if your client has an 80 gigabyte hard disk, you do not need to format the whole hard disk. RIS will not give you such a choice. It will simply take the whole hard disk and then format it. And also, if you recall, if you're doing rip prep in RIS, there is a relationship between the hard disk size on the server and on the client. On the client, it should be equal to or greater than the size on the server, which typically is never the case. So that becomes a huge restriction also, which you can bypass, but again, it becomes a restriction. No such thing on Ghost. Okay. So for those reasons, Ghost is an industry standard software that is widely used to deploy operating systems and applications. In fact, you can have several images in Ghost, go out with a floppy disk and install images on client computers. The other thing I would like to tell you is before we stop discussing Ghost is that I just showed you one of the ways of deploying the application using Ghost. Ghost has other methods of deploying applications using what is known as the enterprise console, where you can simply sit on the central computer, namely the console, and push the images. This requires some pre-installation on the client side. In other words, instead of using a floppy disk, you would have created a small Ghost partition on each client so that that process takes place automatically. If you would like to find out more about how to deploy images using that method, please refer to the Ghost Symantec Ghost user's guide, and you'll find that there are many more methods than the one that I just showed you. A lot of people, when they claim that they know Ghost, all they've done is actually inserted a floppy disk in a client computer and used Ghost to deploy the image on a client. Now over here, I've shown you all the steps that you need from actually creating a floppy disk, from actually creating a client machine itself and taking its image, and then finally deploying it. So hopefully this will help you a lot in deciding between Ghost and RIS exactly what kind of a technology do you need for the kind of environment that you have. If you have a pure Windows environment, you can get away with RIS without paying any additional cost. If not, Ghost is a good method of deploying clients in your network. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you very soon in a different video in Active Directory.